He walked up to that free throw line and looked like he had just finished an all-you-can-eat buffet before tip-off. Not a plate from the buffet, the whole buffet. That image alone should tell you everything you need to know about where things went wrong. The conditioning was so far gone that people watching at home could see it through the screen, and that is not something you can hide under the lights of an NBA arena. Every chef in New Orleans knew his name on a first-name basis, not because of his game highlights or his poster dunks or his free throw percentage, because that man ate, and he ate with the kind of dedication most players only show in the weight room. We are talking about restaurant owners, home cooks, grandmothers in the kitchen, and five-star chefs all knowing this guy personally because of his appetite. That is not a rumor, that is not media spin, and that is not something a PR team cooked up to make him look relatable. The information about what was happening did not come from gossip blogs or random fans on social media. It came straight from inside the organization itself. People who were as close to the situation as you can possibly get were the ones talking, and what they described painted a picture of a player who was not doing what was necessary to reach the potential everyone could see in him. That detail matters because it removes any excuse about outside noise or media bias distorting the narrative. You want to talk about addiction and how hard it is for people to fight certain battles. You have people dealing with alcohol every single day fighting that demon. You have people battling drug addiction who would give anything to break free from that cycle. His battle was different in category but the same in consequence, because the result was still a body that could not hold up to the demands of a professional sports career. Food was the opponent, and that opponent kept winning. 7 years in the league and only 260 total games played. Let that number sit with you for a moment and really think about what it means in context. For a player taken first overall, expected to carry a franchise on his back, that number represents one of the most painful returns on investment in recent draft history. 3 full seasons worth of games across 7 calendar years is not the output of a franchise cornerstone. It is the output of a player who was never truly committed to the grind. The Pelicans made the playoffs twice during his era, in 2022 and again in 2024. Both times the team found a way to get there, and both times the man who was supposed to lead them was watching from the sideline. The franchise player was absent for every single one of the biggest moments his team needed him for. And that is not bad luck, that is a pattern. 0 playoff wins, 0 playoff series victories, 0 appearances where he was actually healthy and dressed and ready to compete when it mattered most. He has been placed on the injured list 35 times since entering the league. 35. That is not a player dealing with a string of unfortunate circumstances or an athlete who simply drew the short straw when it comes to physical durability. That is a number that reflects what happens when the foundation of your professional habits does not match the level of commitment required to survive and thrive in the most competitive basketball league on the planet. 4 different head coaches have come through that organization since he arrived. Alvin Gentry was gone first, then Stan Van Gundy came and went just as fast, and even Willie Green has been under the kind of pressure no coach should face when none of it traces back to his decisions. The coaching carousel in New Orleans during this era is a direct consequence of building an entire franchise identity around one player who could never stay available long enough to build anything real. That is what happens when the cornerstone keeps crumbling. Now look at the jump shot numbers and the cold reality they reveal about his development as a professional. Back in 2020, it sat around 30%, which was already a serious concern for someone asking defenses to respect his range. By 2021, it dropped into the low 20s, and the brief spike near 40% in 2023 looked like a breakthrough until it collapsed again below 20 in 2025. Those numbers do not tell the story of a player working every offseason to sharpen a weakness. They tell the story of a player who never truly fixed the problem. The playing style has not evolved in any meaningful way since his college days at Duke. It is still the same downhill freight train approach: lower the shoulder, attack the rim, draw contact, and get to the line. That style is electrifying when it works, and it produces highlight reels and big point totals. But without a jump shot forcing defenses to guard him off the ball, every defense in the league knows exactly what is coming. A player that predictable at the highest level will always find a ceiling long before he finds his potential. The comparison that keeps surfacing when people really analyze the career arc honestly is Ben Simmons. Both players came into the league carrying generational expectations and a level of hype that made fans believe they were watching something that only comes around once in a decade. Both players showed enough in bursts to keep the conversation alive for years, but the defining characteristic of both careers is the same unmistakable feeling that the next step never fully arrived. Zion is the more gifted scorer and the more explosive athlete, but the arc of the story rhymes in ways that are impossible to ignore. The most honest question you can ask right now is what has actually changed in his game between 2020 and 2026. If you sit down and go through the footage and the statistics and the scouting reports without any emotional attachment to what you hoped he would become, the answer is almost nothing. The same weaknesses that analysts flagged in his rookie year are the same weaknesses that are being discussed today. And that level of stagnation over 6 years in a professional development environment is extraordinary in the worst possible way. Progress is not optional at this level. It is the minimum requirement for survival. General managers around the league have already quietly closed that chapter in their thinking. This is not about what the media says or what the fans feel or what the box score looks like on a given night. Front offices make decisions based on availability, development trajectory, and return on investment. And when scouts and executives look at the full picture of what has been delivered versus what was promised, the math does not work. Even the most risk-tolerant organizations in the league are not lining up to make that bet. The league itself would not look fundamentally different today if he had never entered it. That is a brutal statement, but it is the honest conclusion when you remove sentiment and look only at impact. The biggest stars would still be carrying the headlines, the championship conversations would be the same, and New Orleans would still be searching for its identity as a franchise. His presence in the league produced electricity in moments, but left no permanent mark on the game itself. And that gap between promise and legacy is what defines this entire story. The apathy that surrounds him now is almost more telling than the anger that came before it. When fans are furious at a player, they still believe in the possibility. They still think the breakout moment is coming, and the frustration is really just love wearing a different mask. But when the feeling turns into a shrug and a quiet acceptance that this is simply who he is and who he will be, that is when you know the window has closed and the narrative has been written. The conversation is no longer about what he could become. It is about understanding how something with so much potential arrived at such a quiet and forgettable ending.